Imagine a world where a single invention transformed armies, toppled mighty castles, and redefined power in mere seconds. Close your eyes and picture yourself in 15th century Europe. The continent was about to experience a silent but deadly revolution. Black powder, first created by Chinese alchemists centuries earlier, had finally reached European shores, and nothing would ever be the same again. Kings who once felt secure behind their stone walls, knights who dominated battlefields for generations, and even the church itself watched their world crumble before this new destructive force. You see, before this mysterious black powder arrived, warfare was a game of steel against steel, shield against sword. A well-built castle could withstand sieges for years. Knights in shining armor were nearly invincible on the battlefield. But all that was about to change. This simple black powder, this mixture of seemingly harmless ingredients, would do more than just blast holes in castle walls. It would blast holes in the very fabric of medieval society. Today, you're about to discover how this fascinating invention forever changed the art of war, toppled ancient powers, and ushered in a new age of warfare that would shape our world for centuries to come. If you're passionate about history and eager to uncover the secrets behind the weapons that forged empires, you're in for a treat. This is Modern Age Chronicles, where we bring history to life, one story at a time. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring that bell to never miss an episode of our historical adventures. Get ready for an explosive journey through time. This is the story of gunpowder, the black powder that changed everything. Our story begins in 9th century China, in a world where Taoist alchemists searched for the elixir of immortality. Instead of finding eternal life, they stumbled upon something that would bring death on an unprecedented scale. But here's the fascinating part. Gunpowder wasn't created for war at all. The Chinese first used this mysterious substance to create beautiful fireworks, lighting up the sky during festivals and victory celebrations. They called it huoyao, the chemical fire, and believed its thunderous explosions and brilliant flashes could ward off evil spirits and demons. Picture this: ancient Chinese festivals where crowds gathered in awe as colorful explosions painted the night sky. The air filled with the sharp scent of sulfur and the crackle of burning powder. The Chinese kept detailed records of their discovery, writing about the fire drug that could create smoke dragons in the sky. But then, someone asked a question that would change history forever. What if we put this powder in a tube? It might have been a curious soldier, or perhaps a creative military engineer. This simple question transformed a celebratory invention into one of the deadliest weapons humanity had ever seen. The Chinese tried to keep their discovery secret, but secrets this powerful rarely stay hidden for long. As merchants traveled the Silk Road and Mongol armies swept across Asia, the knowledge of this mysterious black powder began its journey westward. Did you know that early Chinese military manuals contained strict warnings about gunpowder production? They advised makers to wear special masks and work in isolated areas, as many early alchemists lost their lives experimenting with different mixtures. Some ancient texts even describe the perfect weather conditions for making gunpowder: clear skies, low humidity, and absolutely no thunderstorms, for obvious reasons. The Chinese called their invention the medicine of fire, and they weren't wrong about its power to drive away evil spirits. Soon, it would drive away something far more tangible: the age of medieval warfare itself. For centuries, gunpowder remained one of China's most closely guarded secrets. But secrets like smoke have a way of drifting across borders. Along the vast networks of the Silk Road, merchants whispered tales of a mysterious black powder that could shake the earth itself. The Mongols, masters of warfare, didn't just hear these whispers. They captured Chinese engineers and weaponry, spreading this knowledge westward with every conquest. But it wasn't until 1326 that Europe truly felt the earth-shattering impact of this invention. In the bustling streets of Florence, Italy, the first cannons appeared. their thunderous roar announcing a new age of warfare. Imagine the scene. Italian craftsmen, known for their artistic brilliance, now turning their skills to crafting tubes of bronze and iron. The sound of these early weapons echoed through medieval streets, sending both citizens and soldiers running for cover. Here's a fascinating detail few people know. The first European gunpowder makers were often monks. Yes, the very same men who spent their days copying manuscripts and brewing beer were also mixing this explosive powder. The irony? The church initially condemned gunpowder as a diabolical invention, calling it the devil's work. Some bishops claimed it was too cruel for Christian warfare and tried to ban its use altogether. But perhaps the most intriguing story comes from a German monk named Berthold Schwarz. Legend says he was imprisoned for practicing alchemy when he accidentally created gunpowder while mixing chemicals in his cell. The explosion reportedly blew a hole in the prison wall. Whether true or not, this tale perfectly captures Europe's mix of fear and fascination with their new discovery. The Church's resistance proved futile. By the mid-13th century, rulers across Europe were scrambling to acquire this new technology. They didn't just want the powder, they needed the knowledge to make it. European kingdoms began offering huge rewards to anyone who could unlock the secrets of gunpowder production. Suddenly, alchemists found themselves transformed from suspicious practitioners of dark arts into highly sought-after military advisors. Think about this. In just a few decades, a substance that began as a closely guarded Chinese secret had become Europe's most prized military possession. The age of castles, knights, and chivalry was about to meet its match in a simple black powder that could reduce stone walls to rubble and turn the proudest knight into just another target on the battlefield. Imagine standing before a medieval castle, towering walls of solid stone built over generations, designed to withstand anything an army could throw at them. For centuries, these fortresses were symbols of unchangeable power. A well-supplied castle could laugh off a siege for years, while attackers died of disease and starvation outside its walls. But gunpowder changed everything. Those mighty walls, once thought impregnable, could now crumble in days. The thunderous roar of cannons became the death knell of medieval architecture. Stone walls that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble by these metal monsters and their explosive breath. Here's something remarkable. Gunpowder didn't just destroy castles, it revolutionized the entire social order of warfare. Imagine a peasant, someone who had spent his life tilling fields, suddenly holding the power to defeat the most skilled knight in Europe. A simple pull of a trigger and all those years of martial training, all that expensive armor, meant nothing. This was warfare's first great equalizer. The year 1453 marked a turning point that would echo through history. The ancient walls of Constantinople, which had protected the Byzantine Empire for over 1,000 years, faced a new kind of army. The Ottoman forces brought with them massive cannons, some so large they needed teams of 60 oxen to move them. The largest, named Basilica, could hurl stone balls weighing more than half a ton. But here's a detail that often gets overlooked. These huge cannons were actually designed by a Hungarian engineer named Urban, who had first offered his services to Constantinople. When they couldn't afford his price, he went to the Ottomans instead. It's one of history's great what-ifs. How different might the world be if Constantinople had found the money to hire him? The fall of Constantinople didn't just mark the end of the Middle Ages, it announced the birth of a new kind of warfare. Kings who could afford cannons and gunpowder armies now held power that medieval lords could only dream of. The age of feudal nobles, secure in their stone castles, was over. Now, power belonged to those who controlled the new weapons. This shift changed architecture too. Those beautiful tall castle walls, they were replaced by lower, thicker fortifications designed to absorb cannon fire. The elegant towers of medieval castles gave way to angular bastions and star-shaped forts. Beauty bowed to practicality in the age of gunpowder. In just a few generations, gunpowder had rewritten the rules of power. The medieval world, with its knights, castles, and code of chivalry, didn't end with a whimper, it ended with a bang. European engineers didn't just adopt gunpowder, they transformed it into an art form, a deadly art form. These medieval inventors, with their mix of creativity and ruthlessness, began crafting weapons that would have seemed like dark magic to their ancestors. Take the bombard, for instance. These massive siege cannons were so large that many had their own names, like faithful pets of destruction. The famous Mons Meg, built in 1449, could hurl stone balls weighing 330 pounds over 2 miles. When it fired, the blast could be heard from the next town over. But here's the catch. It could only fire a few times a day and sometimes exploded, taking its crew with it. But perhaps the most terrifying invention was the organ gun, or as soldiers grimly called it, the death organ. Picture this. Multiple cannon barrels arranged in a row, like pipes in a church organ, but instead of music, they played a symphony of destruction. One pull of a lever, and dozens of shots would tear through enemy lines. It was the world's first machine gun, centuries before anyone had dreamed of automatic weapons. The engineers didn't stop there. They developed landmines, hidden beneath innocent-looking ground, waiting to unleash fiery death on unsuspecting soldiers. They created hand bombs, early grenades that struck terror into tightly packed infantry formations. Some inventors even designed rocket-powered arrows, though these were often more dangerous to the user than the enemy. But the true revolution came in 1494, when King Charles VIII of France launched what historians now consider the first truly modern military campaign. Picture this: 136 bronze cannons, each one a masterpiece of engineering, rolling across the Alps toward Italy. This wasn't just an army, it was a mobile industrial complex. Here's a detail that brings home the scale of this operation. Each of these cannons required dozens of horses to move it, hundreds of pounds of powder to feed it, and teams of specialized craftsmen to maintain it. The logistics were staggering. Charles had to build new roads just to transport his artillery, and some of his cannons were so heavy they sank into the ground unless placed on special wooden platforms. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect was the psychological impact. Italian defenders, used to traditional siege warfare, were horrified to see their carefully maintained walls crumble in hours. Cities that had held out for years against medieval armies now surrendered at the mere sight of Charles's artillery train. The age of the artillery fortress had begun. Engineers didn't just design weapons anymore, they redesigned entire cities to withstand them. The arms race between cannon and castle would continue for centuries, each innovation in attack spawning new methods of defense. This was more than just technological advancement. It was the birth of modern warfare. For the first time in history, victory belonged not to the bravest or most skilled, but to those who could best organize, transport, and maintain their engines of destruction. Progress always comes with a price, and gunpowder's toll wasn't just measured in lives lost. It killed something far more abstract, an entire way of life. The romantic age of chivalry, with its mounted knights and noble combat, died not with a sword thrust, but with the humble pull of a trigger. Imagine being a noble knight, your family having trained in warfare for generations. Your armor, polished to mirror shine, cost as much as a small village. Your warhorse, bred from the finest bloodlines, moved like dancing lightning beneath you. You were the perfect warrior, and suddenly, none of it mattered. A farmer's son with 2 weeks of training and a crude matchlock musket could end your noble lineage with a single lucky shot. The psychological impact was devastating. Warriors who once prided themselves on personal courage now had to hide behind earthen walls. The noble charge of cavalry, once the ultimate expression of battlefield glory, became nothing more than mass suicide against a line of gunners. As one Italian nobleman wrote in his diary, "The gun makes cowards of us all, for how can there be valor in hiding from what you cannot see?" But here's what many people don't realize. Early firearms were incredibly unreliable. They took forever to reload, often misfired, and were about as accurate as throwing rocks. A skilled archer could loose 12 arrows in the time it took to fire and reload one musket. So why did guns prevail? Simple mathematics. It took years to train a good archer, but you could teach someone to fire a musket in days. Warfare became a numbers game. Battles were no longer won by heroic charges or brilliant swordplay, but by which side could put more men with guns in the field and keep them supplied with powder and shot. The romantic notion of the warrior hero gave way to the grim reality of massed formations and volleys of fire. Here's a fascinating detail. Some nobles tried to ban gunpowder weapons, calling them dishonorable. Others refused to use them, claiming they were beneath their dignity. These proud warriors soon found themselves quite dead, their honor intact, but their lands conquered by more practical opponents. The change wasn't just on the battlefield. The entire social structure of Europe began to shift. The mounted knight, once the backbone of medieval power, became an expensive ornament. Noble families who couldn't adapt to the new reality found themselves increasingly irrelevant. The future belonged to those who could embrace change, even if it meant sacrificing centuries of tradition. Perhaps the most ironic twist was this. Gunpowder warfare, for all its revolutionary impact, was tediously boring. Soldiers spent more time cleaning their weapons than firing them. Battles became less about individual heroism and more about standing in line, waiting for orders, and hoping the man next to you remembered to pack his ramrod. The age of heroes was over. The age of armies had begun. War had become an industry, and like all industries, it cared more for efficiency than glory. Gunpowder was far more than just a weapon. It became the spark that ignited a new age, an era of absolute monarchs, professional armies, and borders drawn with blood and fire. Think about it. This simple black powder didn't just reshape battlefields, it reshaped entire societies. In the 15th century, when a king wanted to expand his territory, he no longer needed the loyalty of noble knights. Instead, he needed gold to buy cannons and pay professional soldiers. This shift in military power helped create the first modern nations of Europe. Kings who could afford the most gunpowder weapons became the most powerful rulers of their time. But the story of gunpowder teaches us something fascinating about human nature. What started as Chinese alchemists searching for an elixir of immortality in the 9th century became the very thing that would bring death on an unprecedented scale. Isn't it ironic? The search for eternal life led to one of history's deadliest inventions. And today, the legacy of that mysterious black powder lives on in every modern conflict. While we've moved beyond simple gunpowder to more sophisticated explosives, the basic principle remains the same. The ability to harness chemical energy for warfare, which began with a handful of black powder and a spark of curiosity, continues to shape our world. Looking back, we can see how this Chinese invention, combined with European innovation, changed everything. From the fall of Constantinople to the rise of modern nations, from the end of knights in shining armor to the birth of professional armies. It all traces back to that remarkable black powder. If you've enjoyed this explosive journey through history, don't forget to hit that like button, share with your history-loving friends, and subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles. Join us next time when we'll explore another world-changing invention, Gutenberg's printing press, the technology that did for ideas what gunpowder did for warfare. Until then, remember, sometimes the smallest things, like a bit of black powder, can change the course of history forever.